Hi, good afternoon or good evening, everyone, to to tune in to Vancouver Asian Film Festival Canadian Shots Up to the Past Filmmakers Talk Series. And before we begin by acknowledging that the land that we are broadcasting at is the unceded territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nation. And I'm Regina Leung, Director of the VAF Industry Panels. So before we start, we'd like to thank some of our sponsors. Presenting sponsor, Canada Media Fund, and a public funder, Canada Council for the Arts. So I'd like to introduce our moderator for our session today, Sadaver Murjani, a human being from planet Earth. Sadaver's main purpose before being reclaimed again is to tell stories that touch the human funny bone, heart, and soul. Starting out in acting, Sadaver eventually began writing, directing, and producing his own films because of the powers of films to shape our emotions, consciousness, and ways of thinking. So let's welcome Sadaver.
Thank you for that very nice introduction, Regina. And I'm very excited to bring to you this program, uh, which we have four filmmakers, two co-directors, and their four films are completely different from each other. We have a documentary, But You're Not Black by Danielle Ayo. Danielle Ayo, would you like to say a few things about your film? We have a documentary, But You're Not Black by Danielle Ayo. Danielle Ayo, would you like to say a few things about your film?
Oh gosh. Okay. I should have prepared this. My documentary kind of just explores the correlation that people have between countries and people's color in its simplest form. Should have prepared this. My documentary kind of just explores the correlation that
Anna
people have
Anaka,
between
her
countries
musical
and people's
Looking
color
Back. Anna, would you like to
in
say a
its
few
simplest
words?
form.
Yeah, as Siddhartha said, my name is Anna Anaka. I'm the writer, director, producer of Looking Back, and my film is a dramatic musical short about a mother-daughter relationship and their individual regrets.
Thank you. Next will be Daniel Irving and Josh Aries, who are co-directors in Mr. James Is Dead, a comedy and action film. Let's start with Daniel. Daniel, I think you're on mute.
I was on mute. Thank you. I'm Daniel, and I co-directed Mr. James Is Dead with Josh. That is all.
Hi everyone, I am Josh Aries. I also co-directed Mr. James is Dead with Daniel, and it's a really wacky, fun film, and I hope you all enjoyed it.
Nice. Well, thank you for joining us, my fellow filmmakers and creators. My first question to all of you: how did your filmmaking journey start? Was there a particular story that inspired that made you like, I'm going to write films, I'm going to make films right away? Was there someone who inspired you? Let's start with Anna.
Start with me. Okay. Well, I started going to Emily Carr in 2016. I did a Bachelor of Media Arts there, but when I went to Emily Carr, I actually had started in filmmaking, or sorry, in photography. But then in first year, we had to take this class that was kind of a combination of like photography and film, and I kind of fell in love with the film side of things, but it was really a professor that I had at Emily Carr, his name's Carlo Ghioni, that really inspired me in and helped build my confidence in storytelling. And that's kind of how the journey began and has continued since.
Thank you. Daniel Irving.
I just made really dumb little videos with my friends because we had no film program at my school when and so yeah, just really dumb stuff in iMovie. And then moved out here and found people who were a lot, more cool, and then started working with them.
Thanks. Danielle, are you okay with? Oh, you can't hear me. How about Josh? Can you hear me right now?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you just fine.
Okay, Josh, you want to go first while Danielle's tech stuff is being fixed?
Yeah, for sure. So it goes all the way back to high school. We had this class called planning where we kind of have to learn our vocation in life. And initially, I was going to be either a policeman or an engineer. I thought, oh wow, okay, cool. I don't mind. I like police movies, whatever, right? So then we went on with the class, and one of our projects was to make an anti-drug commercial PSA. So anti-LSD. So we got given the drug not given the drug LSD, the drug LSD to be anti-LSD, no LSD for high school kids, right? So we had a little group going, and we decided to make a little movie. And with the idea, with our heads, we wanted to be creative with this commercial, or with this PSA, and we wanted to make it as an excuse for us to kind of do dumb stuff as a school project with uh, with this anti LSD theme. So we decided to basically what ended up happening is that we ended up making a film that was super funny for the class and for the school and everything, and people really loved it. And people were saying, "Oh yeah, you should keep going, you should keep going." And over time, I learned that, oh wait, uh, yeah, I think I actually really enjoy making people laugh and have a good time in an audience setting. So it grew up from there, and yeah, yeah.
Nice, nice. Danielle, are you able to hear me, Danielle?
Sorry, sorry about that. I can hear you, but I also hear everybody talking. I can hear like the past 30 seconds. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, so you can speak more about how your filmmaking journey started.
Everybody talking. I can hear like so I'm gonna have to take off my head. I'm gonna have to take off my headset just because I'm hearing a 30-second delay of everybody talking. And honestly, it's super distracting and I can't tell when to talk and when not to talk. So somebody wave at me or tell me in the chat when to stop talking. Otherwise, I will not know when I'm talking over somebody. Jonathan, can you type me the question? Because I couldn't even hear the question. Sorry, bear with me. Or Siddhartha, could you type me the question? How did your filmmaking journey start? My filmmaking journey started with anger and comedy. I am an actor by trade, and I was always interested in the other side and what was going on the other side. And so I had this story because I grew up as a Trinidadian Chinese woman in Canada, growing up with all these assumptions that I was the wrong color. And that just was so infuriating for so many years that it just kind of built up and built up and built up. And so it started coming out. I write comedy and I do stand up. So I started writing these jokes about my culture and about my heritage, and it started just coming out, and I realized that I was like, you know what, I got to make a documentary. And so I started doing some research, and I was like, well, there's tons of documentaries about the immigration of Chinese people to the West Indies, so why am I such a rarity? Or why aren't people well informed about this? Or not well informed, but why don't people know more about this? And so I set out to figure out, well, why do we even hold these stupid beliefs that, you got to be a certain color to be from a particular country? And the documentary started being about that. But yeah, my filmmaking journey started through comedy and anger, if that answers your question.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you. Next question. Why did you choose this particular content in your current film, particular films? I mean, Danielle, you kind of touched base on that. But Anna, Josh, and Daniel, why did you choose to make the story you made? And Danielle, I have a new question for you: Is your documentary, was it scripted or unscripted? I'll type it out for you. So Anna, would you like to start with why you chose this particular film?
Sure. Well, when I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to do for my grad film, I had seen the film Never Steady, Never Still by Kathleen Hepburn. And what I really was intrigued by was like, it was a story about her mother, and it was about Parkinson's, but it wasn't about Parkinson's. So I just kind of liked the idea of kind of bringing the the family, her, like the story of her family in a different form. And so that's sort of what inspired the beginning of me writing the musical, because the film is really a love letter to my mom. You know, just sort of kind of talking through the regrets that I had in our relationship, that I kind of really only came to terms with after she passed away. So that was kind of the impetus of wanting to create this film. But then making it a musical was really because music was a central part of our relationship, and how we were able to communicate with each other when words simply didn't work. So.
Josh and Daniel. Let's start with Daniel.
Yeah, so Alex, our writer, had a few ideas, and we were a few days before Crazy Eight's pitch deadline. And so we need to come up with something, and none of them had quite vibed with me. And then they brought up one that was just kind of really out there and wild and different and fun and exciting from all the others. And I think that's something I was definitely feeling, especially after coming out of film school, where, you know, everything has to be a certain way and there's rules and all of that stuff. And then I think that's also something that Josh happened to be looking for at the exact same time. And then we all sort of came together, and Josh can speak more to that, I think.
Yeah, for sure. With Mr. James is Dead, it was definitely a film that I haven't really seen before, that we haven't really seen before, and we really wanted to see something like new and exciting and funny. And the three of us, Alex, Daniel, and I, we really like comedy. We really like making we really like having fun with our filmmaking, right? So we decided to go down that path and make a film about that's like a homage to the spy movies that we love, and also martial arts and really funny, really good dialogue and improv and everything. And I'm glad it really paid off at the end, because I could see it, like, making its waves around, all over the place. And it's because it's something that we chose to want to see on the screen that we haven't seen before. So yeah, it was just a desire to make it new and fresh. Yeah.
Thank you. And Danielle, did you hear the question? You answered it a bit in your opening. So I want to add another question. Oh, you're muted right now, Danielle.
Sorry again if I'm really delayed or talking over somebody. Please tell me or wave at me that this is happening, because I cannot tell what's going on.
You're good now.
It was unscripted. The concept was based on my comedy and my stand-up routine, but it was completely unscripted. I just went out in the world and I said, these are my questions. Why is this happening? Let's figure this out. That was, it was unscripted. My comedy and my stand-up routine.
Danielle will stay with you.
But it was completely unscripted. I just went out in the world and I said,
what was some of the biggest production challenges in making your documentary?
Challenges, like all emerging filmmakers, it's always budget, it's always financing, it's always finding money to do what you want. And a lot of the challenges were finding people who wanted to talk about race openly and talk about their experiences openly and frankly. And that was challenging. And we're finding people. And Trinidad was shooting in Trinidad was interesting because there's still a lot of crime. So I was very acutely aware of that. As much as I have relatives and family there, I don't have a production company there. So it was kind of like guerrilla shooting with me and my equipment and just kind of running around. And so I think those were the biggest production challenges for me.
Josh and Daniel, I know you did this film in 8 days, so talk a bit about those challenges.
Uh, yeah, 8 days is tough. I think we could both speak to this one, Daniel. Yeah, it's. I think Dan. I think you. Every time this question gets brought up, I think you're the one who always answers it. You
Well,
know
then
what? You know what I'm talking
why don't you go
about.
today then, just for fun?
Yeah. Okay, fine. The biggest challenge. I mean, okay. I mean, I'll say my challenge. I'll say yours. For me, specifically, for me, like, I would say it was had to do with obviously filming fight scenes and fight sequences and having to break it all down and having to have a really solid plan going into the 8 days, not 8 days of shooting. It was 3 days of shooting. 3 days of shooting. So we didn't want to, be on the set and kind of twiddling our thumbs, not knowing what to do next. So we had to have plans. So pre-visualization was a big part of it. If you don't know what pre-visualization is, it's like kind of shooting the film before shooting the film. So we had to shoot a crappy version of Mr. James is Dead before after shooting Mr. James is Dead, so we can see if it actually worked or not. So I had my phone out, we're kind of reenacting scenes and pacing it out in an edit in Premiere and just watching it and understanding what's going on, storyboarding and all that stuff. And the biggest challenge out of this whole previous process, basically making the film before making the film, was having to film the fight scene and to say pre-visualize and rehearse the fight scene and the dance scene in 4 hours, right? I think it was 4 hours in a little like dojo basically in downtown Vancouver. And it was so like nerve wracking because I was surrounded by all these pros, a professional choreographer here and like six awesome stunt people over here. Dan Payne, who was a big big actor here in Vancouver, and it's like, oh my god, we have to keep, yeah, we have to keep her, we have to keep her cool, we have to keep, yeah, I know what I'm doing, but inside I'm like kind of screaming because there's so many like professional people around me. I'm just a kid straight out of film school, but then I'm glad we pulled it off. Just having the composure and having the like I guess the direction to kind of keep it together and execute on that rehearsal day and then on the shooting day. So that was my challenge. But then Daniel, you probably have another challenge.
I would just add a little bit, which is just that then taking all of that prep that we did, and then on the day when we shot, we block shot everything. So we shot everything looking in one direction, basically. Every scene chronologically, mostly kind of through the movie, because it's almost all in one location. Because then we could light everything there and prep everything in that direction, all the set deck, and just shoot it all because we had so little time. And then we flipped around and shot everything in the other direction, kind of chronologically again. And so that was like really confusing and complicated to plan shot wise because you basically have the whole movie planned. Because if you shoot something in one direction and then the next day you come to the other direction and it doesn't work in the other direction, well, you've already shot it the first way. So you just have to know that it's going to work out. So we were really fortunate. We had an amazing crew who was willing to do that because that's super complicated. And so, yeah, it worked out really well for us, thankfully.
Thank you. How about you, Anna? What was your biggest production challenge?
Well, I mean, budget again is always one of the biggest, but I think just in terms of logistics, it was kind of two things. One was trying to find Filipina actresses who could sing and act on camera. So that was a really, really big one. Not that there aren't the people out there, but it was just trying to get access to them as a student filmmaker. Again, with a limited budget and all of those kinds of things. And then the second challenge was we recorded all of the music prior to filming. And so the actors actually didn't have the opportunity to listen to the tracks before we actually filmed. And so I think because we were in the studio for like 2 days, like Monday, Tuesday, I got the tracks on Wednesday, we started filming Thursday. So, or maybe it was like kind of later in the week, but yeah, so those were definitely big challenges for them. But both Jennifer and Ariel totally rose to the occasion.
Nice. So while we are waiting back for Danielle, I would like to ask, who are your like biggest inspiration, like people, filmmakers you look up to, filmmakers you're like, oh, I want to be like these people, or I want to create projects like these people. Let's start with Josh.
Yeah, for sure. I'm always gonna say you could probably see it in a lot of my work. I'm definitely inspired a lot by Edgar Wright. You know, the way that he's very meticulous with his editing and the way that he uses his shots to really like, you know, I don't know, be very punchy about it. But I'm also really inspired by Akira Kurosawa because of the way he uses movement both in camera and in blocking, and how full and filling he makes a scene feel, I guess, with the way that the camera moves and how meticulous he is with that. And an evolution of that, I feel recently is, I mean, not recently, I've always seen it, is in Bong Joon Ho actually, which I feel Bong Joon Ho, who directed Parasite and Mother and all that stuff. Like, I feel like he's a great combination of Edgar Wright and Akira Kurosawa because he uses movement very, very well, and he's also very deliberate and very, particular with his actions and movements and storyboarding as well. And if you can look at, you've probably seen, everyone's probably seen Parasite right now, but he like storyboards everything, and he draws it himself. And it's funny because that's something that I feel like I've been doing for the longest time, and to learn that he does the same process that I do in terms of previs and storyboarding and everything. I could definitely call him like my inspiration, Papa Bong Joon Ho. I pray to him every night. I'm in a monastery right now, but he is my true father.
Nice. Welcome back, Danielle. Thank you. Are you able to hear us good now?
It's working.
Nah,
Oh,
yay!
sounds great. Yeah.
So Danielle, the question I was asking the our fellow filmmakers and creators is, who are your biggest inspirations, like as filmmakers? Was there someone you looked up to, or someone as a documentary filmmaker, as a stand-up comedian? You were saying, was there someone you were like, oh, I really like this person?
Oh gosh, there are a lot, a lot. Um, and
Success.
so I'm just trying to think of like all my kind of favorite movies that I've really appreciated, but I think COVID has kind of turned my brain to mush because all I can think about is like the last show I was watching that I really really enjoyed, which was Dark on Netflix, and I loved the way it was shot. I loved the complex storyline and the fact that they treated the audience with respect and intelligence, and they assumed that they were like, the audience is going to get this. We're going to shoot our high concept um, series, and we're not going to dumb it down or slow it down. And I just like when films treat audiences with respect.
Daniel Irving.
I think also Edgar Wright for me definitely is at the core there, and that's something that really worked well with me and Josh getting together on Mr. James is Dead. Um, just stylistically very exciting and fast paced, and it works well together as well with Josh's editing style. So that all came together really nicely. But then also, I think both of us have a kind of our own take on that, and I'm also a big fan of Paul Thomas Anderson, and especially the performance that he gets out of his actors. And so it's like you've got the funny stylistic stuff that Edgar Wright has, and then you've got the more almost artsy, um, acting focused part, which I hope was reflected in Mr. James is Dead as well. And that's awesome. And the attitude of, like, for those who've seen it, like the frog scene in one of his films, of just kind of like screw it, why don't we just do this, hopefully in a way that's not pretentious, but is more exciting, is the idea of, like, I've seen so many movies, and why have none of them done something different? And then so that's kind of the inspiration that I really like about those two guys.
Anna.
I'm kind of with Danielle. It's like there's just so many people and so many things that I watch that kind of influence what I do. But I really I think when creating Looking Back, it was like Christopher Nolan's one of my favorite directors, and then I was watching This Is Us at the time, and so it was kind of just, you'll see it a lot in the film, is that a lot of it is playing with time. So I like to kind of just move within the past and the present, and I guess there's nothing in the future in that particular film, but and then some Hirokazu Koreeda is another huge influence on me, just because of his care for the characters, and that's something that I really aspire to do in my filmmaking.
In your particular films and documentary, which scene was the hardest to make and why? Let's start with Danielle.
Um, the hardest wasn't so much difficult because of production, but I think it was challenging only in terms of subject matter, which was the scene. I don't want to give too much away if the audience hasn't seen the film, but I do get challenged by a local from Trinidad, and it's just a very interesting conversation that just made me realize how oh my gosh, I am really blanking on words today, how possessive we are about our culture and how possessive we are about our country. Yeah, so it wasn't difficult production wise, it was difficult topic wise.
How so sorry, Danielle, I just because it's very interesting, because I kind of identify a lot with what your documentary kind of talks about. But how do you see, like, you live in T dot Toronto, and
Mhm.
it's a very diverse society, and you talk about how you're Chinese heritage but Trinidadian. So I'm curious, what are your group of friends? Is it like mixed, or is it like, you know?
It's mixed. It's mixed. A lot of my friends are actors,
Mm.
so unfortunately, not a lot of BIPOC. Uh, but it's mixed.
Cool. Thanks. Anna, which was the hardest scene to film in your to make, and why?
Um, it's, well, without trying to give away too much about the film so people actually watch it, I think it was like, the story is not an exact rendering of my childhood, but it was based on things that happened in the past, and and with my mom's struggle with mental health, and so there were a couple of times where there was scenes being played out, and I kind of, when I was writing it, like, I was kind of thinking of the film as a piece, as a project and stuff like that, and then when I kind of saw moments of my childhood being reenacted in front of me, it was, that part of it was really difficult. But I had great people on my crew around me to, kind of provide support when they saw that I wasn't falling apart, but it was just more that I was like reacting to the situation.
Josh and Daniel?
The hardest scene for us, I mean, I could say, obviously, I think I kind of said it before, like the fight scene was super hard to kind of prep and all that stuff. So I kind of already went over that. I would say like the hardest thing I think was just in general, like I could talk about the fight scene again. Actually, let me bring that up. I think that was the hardest scene to film for me because that was totally something I felt like was in my domain. Because like I do in my normal life, in my normal filmmaking life, I film a lot of martial arts scenes, fight scenes, and everything, right? And this was the first time having to make one with a huge crew who were looking at me for answers, right? So I was still kind of like very shy, very kind of like kind of scared about a lot of things back then. And coming straight out of film school, coming straight out of like you know just being I didn't really have a really good image of myself back then. I was kind of insecure about a lot of things. And then all of a sudden when I'm filming a fight scene and all of a sudden I yell cut and all of a sudden everyone turns to me and starts bombarding me with these questions. I'm like, oh god, I get so overwhelmed. And it's so interesting looking back at it then and then now and seeing like how someone like me at the back then would be so scared about just answering simple questions and everything. Right? Just the like just recognizing how much responsibility there is as a director at the time, all of a sudden hitting me like that, especially with Crazy Eights and the level, and being that young and being that like kind of fresh to this whole indie community. I think yeah, it was just that. It was just being so insecure back then. But thankfully everything's been better now. But yeah, the fight scene definitely, and having all that responsibility.
Daniel?
I think definitely the fight scene. But Josh and I kind of split our focuses in a way, and so Josh focused on the fight scene for that one part. So it's a little dishonest for me to say that was the most difficult because that was mostly Josh. So for me, I'd have to say the argument scene. Um, and there's like a pivotal argument scene, kind of 2/3 through, which is about the whole kind of meaning of the story. And that scene we had like so little time. Like Josh had like I think three hours or 3.5 hours or so to do the fight scene, and then we had a bit less for this. And it's just that the fight scene is, it's like kind of the movie in a way, right? Like it's the whole idea of the film put into one scene, and then the argument scene is like, this is
The heart, beating heart.
the heart, yeah, right. So that's the stylistic part, and then this is the heart, and it's like we had like 2 hours to do it, and it was like 2 pages or 3 pages or something, and it was just insane. But everyone was amazing. Our cast was amazing. We did a lot of rehearsal, and it worked out great.
Danielle and Anna, can you speak more about the challenges as female filmmakers? Do you feel like now things are more opening up? What are some of things maybe as guys that we take for granted that maybe you see like you wish it wasn't there? We'll start with Anna.
I don't think I experienced it as much on this specific film, but I have worked on other films where I feel and and I don't know how much of it is being a female and how much of it is being inexperienced. But I had worked with some people that I just really felt were sort of undermining the vision that I had for the film because they had more experience than I did, and so that's. And but when I think about it, it's like, would they have challenged me in the same way if I was a guy? And perhaps not. And I do think that women have a lot of challenge, kind of even being taken seriously. Like I work in the commercial film industry, and 99% of the films or the commercials that I film are all with white male directors, and there isn't a lot of representation of people that look like us. So I think that I think there's definitely a path that's being forged, more so now than there ever has been in the past, but I still think we have a very long way to go.
Danielle?
Yeah, like Anna said, I didn't experience it so much with this production. I made it a point. I also produced this film, so I made it a point to hire as many women as I could. I just made it a point to do that, and one of my DPs was a male, my editor was a male, and my sound recordist was a male, but everybody else was female, and they were super, super awesome. And great allies. So I didn't experience it on that. And then furthering what Anna said, it's really funny because I'm actually going into commercial directing mentorship. And the reason why I wanted to is because my comedy background, and I've done so many commercials in my past. And I was just thinking about it one day, and I was like, I've never worked with a woman. I've never worked with a female director on a commercial. And a BIPOC director on a commercial. And commercials and short form media are definitely something that I love. So I was like, this is something that I want to do, because I definitely think I definitely have what it takes, and I have a specific point of view that I think is valuable in this industry. But yeah, like Anna said, we have a long way to go.
Yeah, for sure. This is a question we have two questions from Facebook. but they'll write it down once they write down what I ask. But this is a question for all of you. Let's say someone's watching this and they have never made a film ever in their lives because they're scared. Oh, yeah. I'll ask this question, then we'll go to the next question. What advice would you have for people who are just starting out? Just briefly. Let's start with Josh and Daniel.
Yeah, for sure. Wait. Okay, I guess I'll talk for this one. If you watch Mr. James is Dead, whoever is new to it and everything, and wants to get into filmmaking, like I would say, I've always been. This is my philosophy with it always in filmmaking and life in general. Just work with what you have. Sure, when you watch Mr. James is Dead, we have all this amazing crew and Crazy Eights backing us up and everything, right? But that didn't really come all in a day. It kind of came from making fun short films with your friends and family. Making a fun anti LSD music video where you jump into windows and rolling down hills and having fun with your friends. So really, I mean, everything I say is probably going to be told by everyone else too. Work with what you have. If you can make a film with just your phone, you could do anything. You literally can just make it with your phone. So and with your friends and your family and your fingers if you have to, and yeah, and have fun with it. That's my advice. Very very short advice.
Daniel?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Josh. I think that's what ended up getting us Crazy Eights in the end, was that we'd done a bunch of projects on our own, and those kind of small things, like Josh literally made a short with his fingers that won the what was it, the Toronto Quarantine Film Fest with over 800 applicants.
Yeah, it's a fight film with my fingers with one which won over which is yeah, it won first place out of 800, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But then if that proof like that I can do it, you can do it too. That's what I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So nothing can really stop a great idea. If you don't have the tools for a bigger idea. Does that help? Anyway.
Anna, and also Anna, you can answer this question because it's specifically to you. So, advice for young filmmakers who are starting, and when you mentioned seeking the cast for your musical, did you set up some expectations? What was it? Why would you want to tell the stories through a musical?
So first question, my advice to young filmmakers is just try it, just do it. My first film was a disaster. Like it will never see the light of day. The people who were in my second year class saw it, and that's great. But it was, but from that process, I learned so much by actually doing it. And it's, I think one of the director mentor I had once is like, if you want to be a director, you have to direct. So, you can't just imagine directing, you have to just keep making projects. And so it's like kind of just riffing off what Josh and Dan were saying. It's just like, just make projects, just do stuff. Don't stop great ideas from coming out. And if it doesn't, and don't be afraid to fail, because if it doesn't turn out, that's okay. The next one could be great, So, and you'll always learn something from everything that you make. And then to answer the question from about like why I wanted to make it a musical. I wanted to make it a musical because that was something that was important between me and my mom. So like this film is about my mom, and it was really wanting to have that connection through music, which is part of the reason. The other part of the reason is I love musicals, so that was kind of one of the what the other reason that we did it. And I had kind of been talking to my friend Shane Rahman, who was the person who wrote the music for it, and we'd been talking about collaborating on a project for a really long time. And so that's kind of why another reason that it kind of just all fell into place to make it that way. But yeah, the expectation for the casting was just that I could find someone who is Filipina because it's representing my family and my culture, and then someone who could sing and then act on camera. So yeah.
Nice. Danielle, advice for upcoming filmmakers?
Ask questions, like contact people, cold call. Well, not annoyingly. Let me rephrase this. don't annoyingly cold call somebody and harass them and stalk them. Not what I'm promoting. But don't be afraid to ask for help. Like I'm pretty sure all of us are on Instagram and Facebook, and people have some very valuable insight, and most people are very they welcome the idea to networking and offering their knowledge and offering tips and tools of the trade. So and that's what I did starting out, which was just talking to everybody that I possibly could to figure out, well, how do I do this? So that's my advice.
Question for Josh and Dan. If you guys didn't have the support or budget from Crazy Eights, what would you do differently?
Ooh, interesting. Yeah, it's kind of like a good addition to the last question, right? Like, what would we do differently? uh, I don't know.
Well, we
I
probably
mean, right?
we
Nah, you
probably
say
would
that.
have we probably would have changed the idea. The idea was kind of hinged on the fact that we had the support of Crazy Eights and that we could get a lot of that stuff come together. But that being said, we would be about, I think, 80% or 90% of the way even towards what we had without Crazy Eights. Which isn't to say that Crazy Eights wasn't amazingly supportive of us and helpful, but a lot of the stunt crew, for instance, was Josh's people that he'd worked with before. And of course, Alex was the writer and the lead. So we had, and Mitch is our DP we'd worked with in film school. So a lot of the crew had come together from projects we'd done already. It's simply stuff like maybe the large lighting setup or the guns or that kind of
Or
stuff.
even getting Dan Payne in our film too. Like, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Like with his caliber as an actor and everything, and also even the location potentially. I don't know. It would have been a completely different looking film, but then I think the heart would still be there. It totally still would have. Yeah.
So we would have had to simplify a lot.
Simplify. Yeah. Yeah.
But you write the idea with like has been said already, with what you have around what you have, and so
Yeah. Work with what you have. So you had a stunt crew. You had the idea. You had Alex, not Dan, if we had no money or anything, but someone else. But then we would have found something. We would have found something. Yeah.
All right. Final question before we wrap up. What is your definition of success? Let's start with Danielle. How does it look like in terms of filmmaking for you personally?
I guess success is finding really honing my voice and coming to a point where I'm like, because I'm still developing my voice and still developing my tools and my technique and my team. So I think success for me is just coming to a I don't actually, you know what? I don't think I'll ever reach that. And I don't think I want to, because it's kind of what drives me. And I don't think I know what success looks like for me, because I think it's just forever going to keep on going on. Not that I'm living in misery. Do not misconstrue this. I'm not living in misery. But it's what drives me. So I don't know what it looks like.
Anna, do you know what it looks like?
I feel like I'm kind of in the same boat as Danielle, like what Danielle was saying, is that I'm still in the process of like finding my voice and those kinds of things. But I think I'll feel successful if you know if I can create work that connects with people, that makes them think about things, and that I've created a community around my films. Like, and I don't mean an audience, but I mean more like, with the cast and crew and the people of a community that wants to come around a story that, I've created. I think that is, that's a success.
Josh?
I actually love this question a lot. I think about it every day. I actually do really like what does it really mean to be successful, or what does it mean to be grateful, or just what does success mean to me, right? And thankfully in this, while if you guys don't know, I'm in Spain. I'm kind of walking along the north coast of it. There's a lot of time to think, okay, And I'm glad you kind of asked me this so I could speak it out loud. And to me, I think success is something where I stay true to myself, to my values, and to what I want to see, what I want to see in this world. So, my values of like honesty, communication, you know, connection, and everything too. And that stuff is just so it's just so ingrained in filmmaking for me. So every time I make a film, every time I make it with like my friends and my family and everything, or every time I connect with someone, I'm always touching on those values. So really, I feel like I'm living it every day. You know, every time I get to make a film, every time I get to talk with someone, every time I get to be here with you guys and talk about like about our films and everything, or even if I make a mistake, I'm still activating my values of being honest with who I am. And I think that's what success is for me. So no matter what happens in the future, if I become like, big, or if I choose to stop filmmaking someday, I don't know. I am happy with that. I'm very successful with that. That's my answer.
Last but not least, Dan boy, Daniel.
I fully agree with what everyone said, and I think, there's kind of mostly two things that matter. One is that is your film doing something good in the world for other people? Is it improving people's lives somehow? Does it matter? And two is it do you feel good about it? Is it fulfilling to you? And I think if you can check those boxes off, and if people are willing to make another film with you afterwards, and affecting people's lives positively doesn't just mean the audience, it means the crew as well. The people who worked on it need to be treated right and want to come back for another project. And if you've checked those boxes, then I think your film can be about anything, and you've still got success.
Well, thank you so much, folks, for such a good talk, talking about your films, your journey. I learned so much just listening to you folks. So please check out their films. It's on VAF on demand until November 13, 2021. Check it out, and thank you. Have a nice day. Have a good night. Keep creating and have fun.
Yeah, yo.